Hey guys, welcome back to another Super Secret Squirrel video. As you can see, this video is not me on my motorcycle, so it's technically not a Motovlogg per se. But I had some guys from the Moto app ask me how I set up my helmet mount for my Motovlog specifically. So here I'm just going to talk about some of the things I went through, kind of some of the growing pains, some of the things I experimented with, different connectors that you can buy, and how my setup has worked for me so far, some things that I'd like to do in the future, and maybe some things I can talk you out of to save you some time and potentially a little bit of money. So let's get started. First things first, as you can see, I got my helmet set up here. I'm using my GoPro to film this video, but I still have the case and the whole setup here as it would normally be when I'm riding. For those of you guys who don't know, I use a Shui GT Air, and as you can see, I got a Cena 10S set up on this side, which is a cause for some wind noise, but I think the trade-off for the most part is well worth it. I haven't mounted anything on the back. I know some guys will mount battery packs and all that stuff back there, but not me. Not really interested in that just quite yet. Not saying it's a bad thing, just not my thing. Let's see, we'll get started with some of the connectors first that you can have, and then I'll kind of talk you through the setup that I'm using. So some of the connectors that I've used, I use the standard GoPro connectors where you can get something like this, and it's what I call a 90 offset. So it's got a perpendicular connector on one end as compared to the other, and then you have connectors like this parallel connector where both of the ribs or the holes are pretty much lined up on the same side. I really like these a lot. They were kind of difficult to find in stores, so I had to actually go on Amazon and find a lot of these connectors that I'm using right now. So those are the basic connectors there. Then you can get into things like this where it's got a bit of a bend to it. Again, this is another parallel connector. As you can see, the ribs and the holes line up. My initial plan was to get a backing on a GoPro. So this is an aftermarket GoPro case that I found on Amazon. My plan was to pull the back door off of this guy, mount this guy onto the back, and then run something like this to it, depending on how the connectors worked out. Obviously, you have to have a nut and a fastener on both sides. So however it was going to work out, I planned on doing something like that and then just mounting it right to the front of the helmet. The problem is whenever you mount this guy on here, obviously the helmet would be, back here somewhere. So I'll just use this connector for instance. And you can see the kind of space that puts out, which for a lot of guys probably isn't ideal. So I thought it would work out, and I thought I'd be able to use it with the bend and the curvature of the front of my helmet, but it didn't. So I'll just keep these pieces for a future endeavor or setup that I use with my GoPro, whatever it's for, boats or motorcycles or snowboarding or whatever. So all right, so I'll come back to this case here in a little bit and how I modified the case that I have on there. These two cases are actually identical. Some other mounts that you can get into, I found this articulating mount. As you can see, it's got a ball joint in here. It's got these two separate pieces. It may be a little difficult to see this line here, but it's got these two separate pieces, and this guy came with two of these. Now, I don't know if you can really see, but this guy is made out of aluminum, and it's got a lot of texturing here on the end of the connector. So it's got some texturing for some grip, and then it also came with a wrench essentially that I could put on the end of this and tighten it down and all that. Again, the same problem that I wound up with on this connector. I mean, it's an awesome connector. It locks up pretty tight, which is not how I thought it would be, but it actually does. And it works out great. The only problem is that it puts too much space between my helmet and the GoPro case itself. So for now, I will not be using that. Kind of in line with some of these guys that we're talking about in terms of connectors. As you can see, this guy actually has some gearing built into the back of it. I don't know how well you can see that with the lighting that I have set up here, but the gears are meant to rotate 180 degrees either direction. And the nice thing about that is you can, mount it to the front of your helmet, move this guy around, and then make up your mounts based off of what angle this guy is based off of. The downside is you can see that it's so wide. So as I rotate this guy here, what I could probably do is once I lock it, figure out which wings I don't need. So these little tabs here. And then I could probably just take a Dremel to them and maybe cut them off and try to leave some of the structural stability around the corners or whatnot. But yeah, this guy, I think, if I come up across another helmet that I want to mount something to, I'd probably make every attempt to use this because I think it has a lot of potential. It's just a little too big as it is. Like I said, you can cut it off and then also modify the 3M adhesive that came with it. And for all these connectors and stuff, I'll put links in the description if you're interested to the Amazon links that I had. But I like Amazon a lot because I can use my Amazon Prime account. I can read reviews on all these things that I buy, and then I can return it just as easily if I don't like it. So, all right, so kind of a hybrid between your standard GoPro mount that you'd find like per se, or like this guy. This guy is kind of a hybrid between what I just showed you and what the standard GoPro mount's like. So you can loosen this screw, you can rotate it 360 degrees, and that's actually what I have mounted on here. As you can see, the first of the two that I ordered did not work out very well. So it made it into the mount fine the first time, and when I went to make this video, actually last week, I pushed the tabs in to get it out of the fastener or the retainer on the helmet, and this tab just clean broke off. So I'm not going to say the quality of this is the highest, but it met my needs, and it's doing what I need it to do right now. So I don't know. It could have been a manufacturing defect, or it could just be that all of those are terrible. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm using a standard base, so as you can see, this one's curved and already has a 3M adhesive on it. This one's flat. What I actually did was I took one of the curved bases that did not have any 3M on it, and then I used this stuff called Sugrue. And Sugrue is essentially, I'll get into some of the packaging here real quick, is essentially like a Play-Doh type material. So you can use it to bond a whole bunch of different types of materials together or fix or repair things. As you can see here, they have glass mounted with metal. So this is a lid to a pot. They're mounting wood on wood to save a duck's head, apparently. And then they have some plastic up here. So you can see up here, it's got all kinds of crazy stuff that you can do with it. The instructions are pretty simple. All it tells you to do is clean your hands, coat open the foil, roll it in your hands, and as you can see here, it essentially turns it into a Play-Doh, and then you can manipulate the Play-Doh or the Play-Doh consistency Sugrue onto one of these base mounts, and then all I did was I took it and I shoved it onto the bottom of one of these curved bases without the 3M adhesive on it, and I formed it. I made sure it touched almost every corner of the fastener here, and then I just trimmed it with a sharp piece of firm plastic. So that's it. I let it dry for 24 hours, and boom, Bob's your uncle. Let's see what else. I've also purchased things like this battery extender. So I have a external battery pack that I may wind up using at some point if I go on any long rides. But another thing that kind of drove me to buy one of these skeleton backs was to run this USB cable through this backing, and then just have the battery pack run through here. The downside to this is it exposes the back of the camera to any potential moisture, rain, snow, sleet, whatever, but the likelihood that I would use this on a ride where I know the weather is going to be questionable is probably pretty small, so I'm willing to take that chance. Let's see, over here I have a microphone that doesn't work anymore, but this is essentially the kind of microphone you're looking for your motovlogs. I have one very similar to this. I didn't buy the same brand, I bought something else, and like I said, I'll throw all the links in the description, but this guy's pretty basic. It's about a $15 microphone that I have sitting in here right now. This was about a $6 microphone, and I kind of learned my lesson after the first time. So as I was experimenting with this microphone and moving it around inside the helmet to figure out what the best place was, I must have broken one of the wires somewhere. I can't really tell where the wire broke, but regardless, the wire's broken. It doesn't work anymore. And for a while I thought it might have been my mic adapter down here. As you can see, this guy plugs right into the side of the GoPro, and then it works as an adapter mount on the back of my camera. So I just took this adapter, I wrapped some duct tape around it, and then I stuck it to the back of the case of this camera back here. So this is what you're looking for. What I did was I took one of the standard foamies that comes on these microphones. So I shoved that on there, or it came with it on it, I don't remember. And then I ordered some of these dead cats. So essentially it's a big artificial piece of fur, and I forced, it's got an opening on the back of it back here. You probably can't see it, it's all black on black, but essentially what I did was I stretched this out and I shoved it on the end of the microphone, and that helps with a lot of the wind noise and sound dampening and things like that. So I actually have this set up inside of my helmet, sitting right about here, just in front of my cheek pad on the left-hand side of the helmet. So definitely worth the investment. It'll save you a lot of time and frustration editing your videos later, especially in the audio quality department. In terms of fasteners to keep your mounts and your connectors attached to your GoPro and then the base plate, you can use some of the standard GoPro connectors like I have here. Like I said, I have this metal one that doesn't weigh a whole lot more than the plastic ones, but I think it's a lot more sturdy and it's a lot easier to grip and manipulate because it doesn't have these crazy, egregious, I don't know what you want to call them, holds on the end. So another thing that I'll use, and I'll show you here in a second, I got these hex bolts off of Amazon, and the nice thing about the hex bolts is they're super low profile, so you can see obviously the difference between these two is pretty significant. And what I was afraid of was that I might be getting some wind noise off of these guys, so I opted to just buy a package of these. They were fairly inexpensive, and you can take a look at them yourself. It's a metric hex, I believe. I don't remember what the exact size was, maybe a 6 mil, but yeah, these have worked out great for me so far. All right, last thing I'll talk about is the case here, and then we'll look directly at the helmet. So this is an aftermarket GoPro case. It came painted black already, and I really like that because obviously it matches the black on my helmet versus this shiny plastic one. This is also an aftermarket. The main difference between the two, obviously, other than the color, is this one came pre-cut. I don't know if you can kind of see that there, but it came pre-cut for access to the USB ports on the side. What I didn't like about this was that I only use one of the ports. So I only use this microphone adapter port, and I've trimmed the side of mine up so that it fits very snugly in there to prevent, to the max extent possible, any water going in. So I ordered one of these guys thinking that the hole would be a little bit smaller, and then if I needed to fill it in with some Sugrue or something I could, but once I got it, and it was, again, fairly inexpensive. Once I got it, I elected not to do that and use it maybe for some off-body camera shots or use it for future GoPros that I pick up. But nothing really to talk about in particular there. All right, so let's talk about how I kind of manipulated the side of this setup here. So I'll show you here in just a second that the cutout's very small. And what I used to do that was a small chisel, a thumbtack, and a sticky note. So let me grab that real quick. At least the chisel. So I have one of these very sharp, very fine point chisels. I don't know if you can really see that. I wouldn't recommend using a knife because that can get very complicated and dangerous in a hurry. But so I used a sharp chisel. I essentially took a sticky note and I put the sticky note actually on the case that I'm using right now, in the clear case. So I put the GoPro in it, I took the cover off, and I stuck the sticky note on it, and I kind of did what some of the sketch artists do. Well, they'll flip some of their drawing paper to see where they want to go with their next line, and that's what I did to kind of trace out a square for my cutout. And then I had it measured based off of where the lens came off. So imagine I have a sticky note here that comes across. I have lines drawn on it for the top and bottom of the lens, and then I just took my thumbtack, not my chisel, but I'm going to use this as an example, and I just poked 4 holes around the area that I wanted to mount this. And then what I did was I transferred that sticky note onto my case, and I poked those 4 holes again. And once I had those 4 holes correct, or what I thought was pretty correct, measure twice, cut once kind of deal, I took a drill. So I had a square cut out here. I took a drill and went through it one time at the top, one time at the bottom, and then I took my chisel and I did the rest. And it took me probably a good half hour because I was very slow and meticulous with how I was making all my cuts. So the final product turned into something like this. So you can see it's a pretty decent cut here. It's tight enough to where I can run my adapter into this hole and there not be really any, once the camera's in it, it obviously sticks a lot better, but there's very little slack or play in this entire setup. So now it's going to give me a hard time. But yeah, it fits in there real nice. You can see I have those hex bolts in here for my setup, and then I'm using that rotating piece. Actually, this one does not have the rotating piece on it. So I'm using a standard piece here. I need to find my other rotating piece and put that in. But I essentially have a perpendicular 90 here and then a parallel short piece, and I wound up putting a small piece of duct tape here because I thought that maybe some of the wind going through these small orifices was creating some additional noise. But let me pop this guy off real quick and then you guys can see the base. So here's the base. Here's how it turned out with the Sugrue. It looks pretty nice all the way around. I mean, I have some, this is my first go at it, so I got some dead spots in here, but for the most part, I think it turned out pretty respectable. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but it gets the job done. And then what I did was I pulled the skirt out, pulled both cheek pads out, and then lifted this back cover. I ran my microphone inside the helmet where I wanted it. Then I connected it to my camera, and then I figured out where I wanted to loop all this excess wire. A lot of it's trapped in the back here, and I don't feel it, and it's not an issue for me. So, and then I don't know if you can really see it all that well inside the helmet. It doesn't look like it, but right in here where my finger is where I have the dead cat and the microphone mounted. But yeah, so that's it, guys. Pretty easy. The Sugrue is a little expensive. I say expensive. It wasn't overly expensive. I would definitely buy it again to use it again, but it's a one-time use deal. So you rub it or roll it or manipulate it however you want, and then stick it onto whatever surface you want, and then it's a one and done thing. The nice thing about using this is I can go in here and I could detach it from the helmet and it won't leave any marks. It's kind of like those quick retractable hangers that you can find, the 3M hangers at the store. So I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions for me, let me know in the comments below. I don't have a whole lot of traffic, so no matter when you see this video, I probably should be able to answer any questions that you have. And then in the future, if I change my setup, I'll let you guys know. I'll put an update video or something up on my channel, and we'll go from there. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. Like I said, if you have any questions, throw it in the comments section below. If you liked the video, please subscribe and like so you get some of my future content. If you didn't like the video, please let me know what you didn't like about it. Obviously, I'm still kind of new into this motovlogging thing, so I don't have some crazy professional camera and lighting setup. But hopefully this is good enough for what you need, and I will talk to you guys later. Be smart and ride safe.